This is the Perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah!
I would leave on vacation, but I'm pretty sure my office would fall into a crevasse in the earth.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your co-host, Micah Shalansky, and with me, as usual, the legendary Matthew Jarvis. What's going on, bud?
Well, Micah, we are here in Scottsdale, Arizona. We just got done with a couple of days of EOS strategy session for the Perfect RIA with our good friend and coach, Scott Rusnick, and of course, the entire Perfect RIA team, Perfect RIA leadership team. We're getting ready to head to the shooting range with AZ Tactical to do some firearms training, and so it's been a good week.
Yeah, it's been fantastic, right? A lot of stuff to go through. And sometimes when we say fantastic as well, that doesn't mean all these meetings are easy, right? Yeah. There's a lot of tough decisions, a lot of things we had to work through, a lot of things we had to get done with the team. And that's not bad, but sometimes it's just tough work we need to do. And one of the things that's really nice about taking and doing tough work is getting time out of the office, right? The reward on the other side of this, and this is going to fit into several camps, several areas, right? But one of them is Parkinson's law. Things will take as long as you allow them to take. And so one of the things we talked as, and kind of our journeys and how we got here, but one of the things that really came up with this was we have to create forcing mechanisms in our lives in order to push us to the next level. My wife is generally really, in a positive way, really good with helping create those vacation forcing mechanisms for me, right? And making sure we get out, making sure we do things. But I look at other advisor practices that don't get out of the office and they don't see as much growth in production. So it's kind of this inverse correlation, right? That says if I spend all of my time in the office, you're not very productive. But sure, there's a balance. If you spend zero time in the office, you're probably not going to be productive either. So there's a good give and take there.
Yeah, and I think something that comes up, and this was on a guest episode we did with one of our Invictus members who credits a lot of his success for having two jobs. He was building an accounting firm and a financial planning practice.
Yes.
And he says, hey, it's devastating to your productivity to not have a forcing mechanism to play office. And he went as far, Micah, and we talked about this on the episode, of saying, hey, if you're playing office, you might as well just get a second job. And the reason it makes me think of it is if you're working constantly, then you're never not working, which means your productivity just falls. Your brain just adapts to this level of monotony of no matter what I do, I'm just going to do the same thing tomorrow. So why work so hard today?
Yeah, and it robs yourself of being able to prioritize and make the right decisions, right? So being efficient isn't making all of the decisions effective as you can. We want to be effective with our time, and effective means I'm spending the right time and making the right decisions about the right things, right? That's where I want to spend my brain power and focus. So one example is like financial planning software, right? You could spend, or tax software, or anything else, other CRMs, right? Anything else. You could spend a vast amount of time trying to pick out whatever software you want to go to, or you could look at the industry and say, look, these are the top three, I'm picking that one and I'm moving on.
Yeah.
Right? Now you could say, well, it's a reckless decision. Well, so hold on a second. Thousands of other advisors have already vetted the system out, right? There's already all this information. How much more due diligence do I need to put into this? It's okay. Maybe a little bit could be justified, but you don't want to go to the nth degree with trying to inspect their code and going through all these difference, right? So there's a level here that you got to be effective at. And this is where vacations come in.
Yeah, it really is. And so on that example of picking software, really picking anything, your best option is just to go to 2 or maybe 3 advisors who have the practice you want. So not necessarily your peers, right? If you're hanging out with guys that have terrible practices, don't ask them for anything. Somebody has a practice you want. Hey, Micah, what financial planning software do you use? I don't use any. Okay, well, I have to figure that out, right? So just shortcut that decision. There's also, Micah, on vacation and time out of the office, a ton of psychology around the anticipation of the vacation brings more reward, psychological reward, than often the vacation itself. That energy, that psychological reward pays off in your work. So if you're working and you say, well, next week is the same as the week after that, is the same as, but if you're saying, hey, listen, in 3 weeks, I'm going to leave on vacation with my family, I got to get my S done. Wow, now we're working at a whole different level of productivity, and we can't discount the impact of that. Yeah,
so we'll get into a little bit of the mechanics on how to make a successful vacation from an office standpoint. But one of the things when we talk about Parkinson's law, and sometimes I get pushback from people saying, well, Micah, it really doesn't work that way. And I said, fascinating.
It does work that way.
It does work that way, right? But how many times would, if you're taking a vacation, you've gone on an airplane trip, whatever it is, how many times have you gone to the airplane and you forgot to pack your suitcase, or you ran out of time to pack your suitcase?
No, I got it all done.
None. Right? It's amazing, right? And you could say, well, of course I'm not going to leave without my suitcase. Yes. Why? Because it's Parkinson's law. You have a limited time in order to get that thing done. Now, whether you take 2 months to pack or you pack 15 minutes before, either way, you're going to pack and get it done to get to the airplane on time. So that's a very small example. And now we get to apply that to many other things and improve. All right. So let's talk about getting on vacation.
Yes.
Right. And how to get there. So whenever we're going to talk vacation, now when I'm talking to vacation, I'm not talking about a weekend thing, going up to a cabin and relaxing. That's not vacation. I'm also not talking about working somewhere else. This is different, right?
Not that the latter is bad.
No.
You can certainly do it if it's being intentional. If you're telling your family, hey, we're going to go to Disneyland, and what you're doing instead is working in the hotel all day, that's a problem. But if you say, hey, I'm going to go to Hawaii for a month,
right,
and I'm going to work half days, that's a different story.
Yeah, different story. So be intentional, right? Right. Which
always.
time are we talking about? We're talking about remote work, which is you're going to balance a little bit less work and time and more family time. Or are you talking about vacation where you're going to unplug? So example would be like, I'm going to go to Moose Camp, right?
Yes.
There is no internet. There is no cell phone service. It makes it, it's a forcing mechanism to be unplugged. The other one that came up, we talked about it a little bit before, was a recent trip to Israel that we did. It was a relatively short notice one, and made a cognitive decision, even though there's internet and cell phone, of saying, hey, this is a time that I just need to unplug on a pilgrimage with my family, and we need to make sure that we can have that time. So, okay, just like we were talking about before, you got to put hard work in and make hard decisions. That means before this, leading up to it, we had to look at it and say, great, what are all of the things, not necessarily need to get done while I'm gone on vacation, but when I get back from vacation, what needs to be done where I feel things were productive and I'm ready to walk into surge and to conquer.
Well, and there's a couple of approaches when you're leaving office. We'll talk about fear setting in a second, but this one came from my good friend and coach, John Barron. And he said, listen, there are 3 things that can happen while you are gone, or 3 approaches to being gone out of the office. Approach number 1 is, as long as I don't come back to a pile of cinders, like there's going to be fires, but it hasn't burned to the ground, I'm going to define that as success. That's an option. Approach number 2 is, it's about the same when I get back as when I left. That's also an approach. Approach number 3 is, my office is actually better when I got back than when I left. Now, for the not burned to the ground, that one is probably just the default option. For the other 2, you've got to be really intentional. Like if I want to come back and have things better than when I left, I've got to be really clear to my team, hey, here's what's going to happen while I'm gone, and here's what I'm going to expect when I get back. If I just say, hey, I'll see you in 2 weeks, I guess as long as everybody's still there and the place hasn't burned down, that's about how it's going to go.
Yeah, no, I'd say it's not a good plan. I'm going to go with that. No. I think it's a bad plan, right? So yes, what do we want to be like when we get back? And also, as a business owner, if you unplug for a little while, when you come back, you're like, oh crap, I need to look at this. Was this burned down? Were these responded to? Was this done? So what are those key KPIs that you need to be able to see? And then how do we communicate it with your team? Another thing to go through when I was doing this, which is really funny because I do take a decent amount of vacation and time off and other things with the team. A little bit, yeah. But when I had let my leads know that I'd be going on vacation, one of them came to me and was like really worried. They're like, what if something comes up? How are we going to get a hold of you? And Jarvis, it blew my mind because I'm like, this is like a normal thing. We've been doing this for a long time, but it gets into one of the steps we cannot skip, which is fear setting.
Totally. Before we jump into fear setting, Micah, we just made this joke about a little bit of time out of the office for our new listeners, right? We have listeners that have been with us now for several years, listeners that have joined us new. The podcast continues to grow. Round numbers, vacation time in a year. Your recent trip to Israel, that was 2 weeks out of the office?
Yeah, 2 weeks out of the office. January, I'm gone for a month in Hawaii. I do a little bit of morning work inside of there because it is a month. I take a month off in September to go moose hunting, plus there's fishing in July and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm out of the office about 8 months out of the year. Is kind of that out of the office number. Yeah,
and I usually count it the other way. So I'm in the office about 100 days a year, which translates to, I think, roughly 4 months in the office, and the other 8 are out. So I just wanted, for our listeners, and maybe this is a humble brag, which is not really the intent, we're not talking about taking 2 days off at some random point. And this is where the fear setting comes from your team.
Yes.
If you tell your team, hey, I'm going to be gone for a day, okay. No big deal. If you say, hey, listen, I'm going to be off the grid for 2 weeks. Like I last year did a 2-week trip down the Grand Canyon. My satellite phone didn't even work down there. The team was legitimately concerned. And this is, Micah, to your point. We start with fear setting with the team, which is a great Tim Ferriss tool.
Yeah, huge Tim Ferriss tool. And in fear setting, one of the things I always have to remind myself, so I'm reminding our listeners, you guys are probably better at it than I am, but this isn't about your fears. This is about your team's fears. Now, you can do fear setting on your own. That's totally fine. But what I'm talking about right now is working with your team and walking through what are their concerns. Her concern was, what if something comes up with a client and I can't get a hold of you? Right? It was like, okay, great. Well, let's chat about that. And let's kind of go through what our communication policy is. Now we have an enterprise model. So my individual, relationship managers, we have several of them, it's not okay for them to reach out to me directly. We have a chain of command. So we talked again about what's that chain of command? How would things be escalated? Then I was like, great, give me some scenarios that happened in the last.
A little bit more specific.
You're right, because we can always pontificate on these things. I said, great. In the last 3 months, what is something that's come up that you've needed to have my help on? And generally it's, well, nothing, but what if? It's like, okay.
Yeah. Let's go down this. I'm with you. I love having actual scenarios, but even the what ifs, when fear setting, it's not about dismissing or diminishing the concern. So when I was doing my trip, my team said, what if a client calls and they need a lot of money, not just like what's in their bucket, in their war chest bucket, but they need like a lot of money. What do we do? Okay, let's walk through that. Like if a client calls and they say we need $500,000, what are we gonna do? Okay. Sell all the bonds in the account. We wrote this down. Sell all the bonds in the account, distribute the money, and in a week when I come back, we'll fix it.
Yeah.
What if the SEC shows up for an exam? Well, here's Micah's cell phone number. Here's the attorney's cell phone number. Call these people. Tell the SEC I'm on vacation, and I'll come back, and we'll take care of it.
Right.
So it's not about dismissing it. And we wrote these all out in a document. I know you did as well. All right, if this happens, here's what you're going to do.
Yeah, and just real life. I mean, one time when we went through an SEC inspection, they're normal. And when we went through an SEC inspection, it was one of the times they wanted to come in is when I was going to be gone moose hunting.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're people too. And they're like, why doesn't it work at this time? I said, well, I go moose hunting with my father and I spend 2 weeks out of the office. They're like, okay, that's great. We'll just push it back by a week. I mean, these are real life things that are going to be happening. So working with your team in that and empowering your team on the communication policy. So if you have another advisor, right? I love your thing on the distribution. Here's the distribution plan. And if our role, if it's outside of our buckets distribution, outside of what we have, then bring in another advisor.
Yeah.
Right. And this also gets to another thing that you can talk about. If you're also concerned about client communication, let your clients know you're going out of the country.
Yes.
Right? This is 100% okay things to do. As long as you're taking care of your clients are super supportive of you doing other fun things. And so I reach out to my clients when I'm taking an extended period of time out of the office and unplugging and just letting them know, especially these trips are planned, right? I'm going to go walk the Camino next year. So now we're talking 6 weeks I'll be out of the office when we do this trip. And so, okay, great. I'm going to let all of my clients know in fall of this year and spring of next year that we're doing this Camino trip, right? Now it's not a brag. It's not saying my vacations are better than yours. I'm setting these up expectations so they know what's going to happen. So next year, when something happens in their life and they call and say, I need to speak to Micah. Well, Micah's unavailable for 6 weeks because he's in the Camino, right? They're like, oh, he did tell me about this, right? And now they're more amenable to a longer delay process in getting communication back or chatting with another advisor to helping their things. I've preset those expectations.
Yes, preset the expectations, and then preempted is not the right word. You kind of educated past objection, because this isn't saying, hey, I'm going to be gone for 6 weeks. The doors are going to be locked.
Yes.
No one's going to answer the phone, call us back, right? So clients are excited for you that you're taking this trip, but you're also alleviating this. But great news, we have this whole team in place. And by the way, this is a fear setting for everyone listening. There is nowhere in the world you can be that you can't get back within 48 hours. There's just not. I mean, now it's a matter of cost, right? So if, even if the team comes up with some insane scenario, I'm not even going to try to pontificate on one. Like when we were on our boat trip, you could track me down. My satellite phone got access every few days. I could call a helicopter, come have it pick me up, take me to the airport. Would I be out $50,000? Yeah, I would, but that still not the end of the world. Now, by the way, I've never had to do that, but let's just fear set through this thing.
And that's one of the things that I tell my clients is, on the clients, I don't really lead with the great news. What I generally say to them is say, as you already know, Charnel and our team does a fantastic job taking care of you. And she's always the one that's going to be that front line. And of course, she's going to have access to me if something else comes up. It just may be a few more days delayed. If it's a 911 emergency, is that going to be okay? So I'm asking their permission in a way. And it's a realistic ask, right? So clients don't come back and say, no, that's not okay. Again, their clients are super supportive of you having vacation as long as you got your crap done to take care of them.
Yeah. Two other things I want to add. One is you need to do the same fear setting with your family. Now, I know each of you listening is thinking I'm speaking to you specifically, and maybe I am, but some of you are not fun to travel with. And you know who you are, and it's most of us.
Stop talking about me. It's rude. I'm right here.
We get antsy. We get anxious. We've lost the dopamine highs of being the king of the domain or the queen of the domain, of being able to solve problems, of having people come to us, all these things. And what that often ends up with is you're a real pain in the booty, present company included, Micah. No,
it's
myself.
True. It's true.
And so I do this with Jackie. When Jackie and I say, hey, we're going to take this long trip, my wife Jackie, she says, cool, what are you going to do each day to get the level of excitement that you need? So for me, it's dirt biking is one of my big things. So she says, hey, let's plan ahead. Let's find somewhere you can go dirt biking or go to CrossFit or learn to surf or whatever that is, because she and the kids want to go at a different pace than I want to go to. And I used to think, oh, that's bad. My pace is the only pace. Nope, it just is. We all like different things. And so if I can plan ahead with the family and say, hey, all right, we're going to do one adventure a day. Dad's going to do 4 adventures a day. But as a family, we're going to do one. You guys can sit by the pool the rest of the day. So don't underestimate the importance of fear studying this with your family.
Yeah, and walk through what those signs are, right? Empower your spouse to help out with that. I know when Kelly and I were going on this trip, it was a group tour. There were some concerns that I had. Don't do really good in those group things. At least that was my mindset kind of going to it. So we were definitely working with a coach as well about saying, great, what are some things that I could, put in my back pocket that if I start getting in a bad headspace about waiting in lines and group tours and 10,000 people, that I could kind of get into a more productive space for me. Now you can say, Micah, you should be able to suck this up for your family. Okay, well, you could say that, but I need to put more arrows in my quiver, more tools in my toolbox to be successful, to have a great trip, and just bring Kelly into that conversation with me. And also when we go for a long extended period of time, there's only so long I can stay disconnected, where again, I'm not being as productive as I'm being called to be. And I got to have that time to come back. And so we'll plan, even on the Camino trip, we're probably going to plan a little stint where I'm going to go somewhere else that, rent an office somewhere and check in and just knock out some things, maybe do some content, maybe do some other stuff that gets me in a really positive space. Then I can come back to the family. Yeah. And so again, these are things you just got to plan for.
How frequently do you have if you're going on a 6-week trip, just if you were going to guess, I know there's some logistics about where you are on the hike, but
it's 10 to 20 days, depending on what I'm doing, right? If I'm doing something pretty physical, that, believe it or not, that will really allow me to go longer, right? If it's sitting on a bus and watching things for 10 days, oh, that's brutal, right? But if I'm walking, I'm hiking, I'm doing other physical activities that are engaging, I can go longer for that 15, 20 days. And then at that point in time, really want to be more connected.
I wanted to draw that out because it's not every day. And what I run into advisors is, hey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on vacation, but I've got to check in with my team every single day. No, you don't.
Yeah.
And that's not vacation. And you're not getting your mind away from it. So we've now lost all these dopamine receptors of I'm going to take a week off work, all this excitement. No, I'm still going to work. I'm just going to work from another location. It's actually going to be worse because I don't have my triple monitors or whatever the case may be. The other piece on that, for that check-in, Micah, that you mentioned, and this is really critical. It took me a long time to learn this. That time where you want to work, let's say you're gone for 6 weeks and you say once a week on Wednesday, I'm going to work in the morning. That's not in the living room of your hotel room.
No.
That does not work. It doesn't work. It's find a Regis office space, find a space in the hotel. But what happens if you try to do it from your hotel is that your spouse is making coffee, your kids are up and around, you're getting interrupted, the internet's bad, the lighting's bad, all these things. And so instead of that being a productive check-in, it's this really source of irritation. It becomes an energy drain. So that's something I'm working for just in life in general, but especially on vacation. What is building my energy and what is draining my energy? And
then having that conversation with your spouse and your kids as well, right? So we're going to go on this long, 6-week Camino trip. Great. What are energy building activities? What are energy sucking activities? And I tell the kids, right? There's some things Kelly likes to do that the kids aren't super engaged in, but she wants the whole family to be there. Tell the kids, great, suck it up, right? This is where, this is where you're going to be a supportive for your mother, right? And we're going to also plan other days that are for each kid, right? So they can have their day, they can plan, they can do things that are super productive for them, right? So this works across the board with the family.
Because kids, I know it's going to be a shocker, mom doesn't wake up in the morning and think, what I'd love to do this week is make sure the kids have clean clothes. You know what I'd really love to do? Or whatever roles you have in your family.
Or food, or heat, or
I know we all think that it's just this endless joy to be around us, and I'm certain it is.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Not always. There may be moments where it's not. So, Micah, we talked about you coming back to your office and your office being better than it was when you left. Right? This is kind of our aspirational goal. What has to be in place for that to even have a chance of working?
Number one, my mindset that it won't be perfect.
Great, yeah.
Ooh, so if my mindset is this is going to be so much better than I left it, right? Then my mindset and something is wrong, now it all falls apart. And so for my mind, I got to give things a range in order to be super productive for me. So one, it's like, okay, where's that minimum standard? Everything was taken care of and were all the processes followed. If all the processes were followed and the team did what I asked them to do, then this is great, right? Regardless of the outcome, what their activities are, that's what I'm going to measure to be better than what I left. And so that gives me a lot of peace of mind because my team is really good about following the processes. So number one, I got to set my expectations up. Number two, I got to set the team and empower them to do things that they can fully do. For example, if I said, hey, I want you to create a new value add that's going to be helpful for my clients. You're laughing, right? Yeah, not a great use of my team's time. Nothing bad against the team, but this is our area of genius, not the team's area. Now, if I said, hey, here's a value add you've run for the last 10 years, and I want you to have that ready for me when I come back to review and send out, that's something the team can easily do. They've run it for the last 10 years. I wouldn't do a new value add they've never done, right? Because, okay, we're not there to kind of hold hands through things. So what are things the team has done consistently and reliably? What is a process we have set up for? And a project. I never want to leave the team without a project to do, because otherwise, you know, when the cat's away, the mice will play. And so we got to have a project for them to do to be able to conquer.
And not even maliciously play, right? It's that there was a steady stream of things to do from you, and that stream is gone. And Parkinson's law is still in effect for them, like everybody else. And so they'll just kind of level out with it. So I did examples of projects that we've done in the past. A great one are if there's data points missing in your CRM.
Yes.
That's where, like, if your driver's licenses aren't current for all your clients, well, that's a great time to go through and check those, get those updated. If there's information from the tax returns that need to be typed in, we discovered one time that we hadn't been consistent on the naming conventions of our file. It's really a whole podcast we need to do. And so I said, great, here's how I wrote the instructions. Here's how you're going to find all the files with the wrong naming convention. Here's written down the new naming convention. When I get back, I want them all to be done. I know how many there is. It's 1,300, 13,000, whatever the number was. Make sure these are all done by the time I get back. So to your point, it's very clear instructions. Here's what the project is. Here's how we're going to measure success.
And when I'm doing that too, Jarson, I know you do the same thing. I don't write out the process, give it to them the next day I'm out the door, right? I want to give this to them a week in advance so they can come back to me with questions. I want to go through my communications policy again with them and the team. Right now, again, with our enterprise model, I'm talking less and less to the team members and more just to my leads, and it goes down from the leads down as we're growing. But reviewing the communication policy again and empowering the leads of saying, great, how are you going to follow up with your team? What are any potential pitfalls? What are other things that we can help mentor and guide them with so they don't feel I'm handing them a bag of crap and then walking out the door?
It's also a great time for office remodels. You know, if the paint needs to be freshened up, I've been to some of your offices, the paint needs to be freshened up or the carpet needs to be replaced. Again, you've got to plan that weeks in advance to get it spun up. That's a great time to do that. You're not there. You're not having meetings. Great. Let's have the office painted. Let's have the carpet replaced. Let's get new desks. Let's upgrade computers. So there's a lot of projects that can happen. But Micah, to your point, they have to be projects that can go 100% without you.
Yes. So set the parameters up. I mean, an office remodel, who's going to supervise that?
Yes.
And are you going to be happy with the decisions that they make, right? Really important things. We did one while we were gone. It was fantastic because we had someone in the team kind of running that, going through it. So communication policy, I would say, would be another big thing. Fear setting would be another. I'm just looking back on my list. Those are kind of the really big ones. Oh, that was the other thing I had written down, is helping your team plan their vacation. Right. And so what we have found out with our team members, be interesting to see if yours is different, but with our team members, especially our operations people, they will not take their vacation really. They'll take a little bit of it, but not a lot. And they have the same lack of productivity things that come up. So one of the
still human.
Yeah, they're still human.
Using the Martians.
Yeah, not yet. Well, we're still working on the robots. But since they're still human, right? So one of the things we talk about the importance of vacation, why we're going on vacation. And then I want to go back to the team with it as well and say, great, when are you going on your vacation? And let's make sure it's planned. We have blackout dates, right? You can't take vacation during search. Great. There's a lot of other times that you can take your vacation.
This brings up an interesting point that comes up a lot with advisors, not as often with teams. Advisors are always nervous, we have to fear set this, that if they start taking vacation, their team will be resentful. And I suppose that happens every once in a while. Some of that's going to depends on how you position it. But if you have a team member that is in fact resentful, that's not a person to be on your team any longer, right? You can have kind of one round of communication. Hey, this is my vacation schedule. My name is on the building. I'm signing the paychecks. Here's your vacation schedule. These are separate things. But otherwise, I pretty rarely see it. Teams are almost relieved. Unless the only time I've seen it a problem, there was one advisor I knew of who was just a jerk. And he would kind of throw it in his team's face how often he was going on vacation. And it ended up in team members leaving and whatnot. I've seen that once in my entire experience in the industry. Otherwise, most team members are glad because they know that you're better when you're getting ready for vacation and you're more recharged when you come back. They're relieved that you're doing it.
And again, I'm going to think this the same thing as clients, right? Clients and team members are the same in this category. Are you taking care of them, right? And making sure you can do these things and then they don't mind if you go on vacation, right? If you're not getting your stuff done, you're setting them up for failure with clients. You didn't return your client's call. Now you're going to go on vacation. Your clients are going to be pissed you're not returning the phone call, and you're giving them a bag of crap. They're going to resent you for going on vacation, right? But if I'm checking in advance and saying, hey, here's all the things that'll happen, and this kind of happened to me right before I went to Israel, check in on all of the other things, then something with a client came up. In my mind, it wasn't that important, and we could easily handle it at our scheduled surge meeting that was coming up in 3 weeks. In our operations person's mind is, no, I need to talk to them right away. Okay, so I could balance that out, or I could just make a 15-minute phone call to a client and then have my ops person not worry about something for 3 weeks. Make the 15-minute call.
Make the call. Yeah, we're looking for progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
And that's where we get stuck a lot of times. I've got a plan for every single contingency. No, plan for 80% of them, have a backup plan for the other 20, and rock and roll.
Well, this podcast is all about action items, right? This is so funny when you don't do it like in front of the computer. I don't have the clock, so I just want to keep talking about this. But let's go ahead. Let's transition to some action items, because these are the things that you need to implement right away. And I'm going to say number one, and my wife's going to listen to this, and it's going to be used against me, but that's all right, because things I need to improve on. Use for me. Fair enough. Use for me. Use for me is you need to have the dates of your next vacation where you're going to unplug on the calendar.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. How long of a vacation? Because again, we said weekend doesn't count.
It's got to be at least 2 weeks, right? Where you're unplugging, because that forces you to move that direction. Now, if you can conquer 2 weeks, sweet. We're talking 3 weeks, 4 weeks, right? Start bumping that up a little bit where you're uncomfortable. One of our main tenets is being uncomfortable, which my wife used for me on our last, trip that was there. And it was really great because it got me in a very uncomfortable spot. It was a last minute short term. It was a last minute long trip out of the country. And I was like, oh crap, there's a lot of stuff I got to do to get ready for this. Made me uncomfortable. And it really helped wash through a lot of processes and make things better.
I love it. Let me just give you a 5-star tip here. You're going to book this. Let's say you have the courage to book it. And unless you book the flights non-refundable, you're not going to go on the trip. Ooh. So you're going to have to say, oh yeah, I'm going to take these 2 weeks off in July and I'll spend time with the family, except that I'm just going to keep working. So if you're going to make this happen, book non-refundable trips somewhere crazy, somewhere exciting. Don't worry about all the other logistics, by the way. You can figure those all out. Book the flights, non-refundable, and then you can talk to your travel agent or whomever to figure out how you're going to do in between. But if you're saying, I've always wanted to take the family to Europe, book the flights to Europe, make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Worry about those details later. And the third action item I'm going to stick inside of this is you're going to plan the vacation. You're going to book the vacation. And the third one is after you book it and you say, oh crap, write out your list of your fears.
Yes.
That's your fear setting list right there. Just let it flow. All of them come out, write them all down. Now we have time to address those and to make sure it's successful.
Yep, and then for our members, our Backstage Pass members and our Invictus members, inside of the member portal, you will find copies of the communication policy, which can help in general. You'll also find the out-of-office a checklist, or emergency policy that we created when I did my 3 weeks in China, when I did my 2 weeks in on the Grand Canyon, Micah, when you're taking your extended trips. So that way you have something to go to. And then you can take that to your team, by the way. This is the beauty of being part of the Perfect RIA program, is you can tell your team, like, hey, listen, I don't know if this is a good idea, but there's these two guys, Matt and Micah, and I don't know, they're kind of weirdos, but they do this. Let's just try it out. And if it doesn't work, it's because, those guys. And it gives you a gun to point. And that might seem a little silly, but a stranger in uniform, hey, we're just going to try this out, and we'll see how it works.
Well, Jefferson, with our teams, which are fantastic, right? I love our teams. They do a great job.
Best in the
there's been multiple times where we've got our teams together for something, right? And either my team, it's just worked both ways, but where your team has said something and my team's like, hey, have we ever thought about trying it this way? And I'm like, I've been saying that for like a year, right?
I told Jarvis to try it that way.
But it's the stranger in a uniform, which gives these things a lot of authority. So I don't get mad at it anymore. It's just, we're human. This is the way life is. This is a stranger in uniform with your team to help empower them to be better. Well, Jarvis, I think it's about time to head to the range. So until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.
Information designed to change lives.